The Industrial Revolution first started in Great Britain and eventually progressed to the United States in the early 19th century. It was first created to raise people's standard of living. Before the revolution, the majority of Americans lived on farmland, small towns, or villages, where there was little manufacturing. A farmer was also able to make shoes, and the women spent their days making soap, candles, spinning yarn, or making clothing. The manufacturing that did take place was in homes or in rural areas, and it was done by hand. Some products made in the home, including clothing, furniture, tools, hardware, jewelry, leather, silverware, and weapons, were even exchanged for food. But people lived in fear that the crops they grew might fail, as many of them already suffered from malnutrition. In addition, diseases and other epidemics were unfortunately common. In the late 1700s, the first sign of a revolution occurred when the steam engine was developed. It introduced the concept of companies and factories being able to create goods using machinery, as opposed to a family working together at home. One of the purposes of the Industrial Revolution was to have more goods produced at a lower cost. An immediate change included the production of goods, what was produced, as well as where and how it costs, and efficiency. The Industrial Revolution was beginning to turn an agricultural economy into one with machines and manufacturing. The Industrial Revolution transformed human life by changing methods of manufacturing, the way people made a living, and the products available to them.
Until the 18th century, the manufacturing of cloth was done by hand. Then, the development of machinery came. It was a very rapid change in the world. Machinery, such as the spinning wheel to produce textiles, the water wheel used to power machinery, and the steam engine were invented. Many of these inventions made work easier and cheaper. As these inventions created new manufacturing and industry, many people also moved from farms to cities. In 1712, Thomas Newcomen invents the first steam engine. It is not very useful yet, but the idea of using steam to make machines go will be important to the Industrial Revolution. In 1764, James Hargreaves, a British carpenter and engraver, invents the spinning jenny, a device which allowed one person to spin many threads at once. The machine spins more than one ball of yarn or thread at a time, making it easier and faster to make cloth. In 1769, James Watt from Scotland designs a more efficient steam engine, one of the most important inventions of the Industrial Revolution. Steam engines power the first trains, steamboats, and factories. In 1779, Samuel Crompton combined both the spinning jenny and the water frame to create a machine known as Crompton mules, which produced large amounts of fine, strong yarn. In 1794, Ely Whitney creates a machine that makes it much easier to separate cotton seeds from cotton fiber. It greatly reduces the time it takes to clean cotton and helps the southern states make more money from cotton groups. This material storage forced factories to open up for greater production hours and placed hard demands on the men, women, and children in the workplace. It also led to America to develop electricity, transportation, and industrial processes.
During the late 18th and early 19th centuries, Great Britain and US became the first country to industrialize. Many people moved from the rural farm area to the urban industrialized city to find a better job. But sadly, when they got there, things were not as bright as they believed. Their job required long hours and offered little pay. To live in those difficult circumstances in the city, children needed to involve and be part of the worker in the factories. The age of these children was just from 6 to 14 years old. Their job was cleaning under and inside machines, pushing trolley full of coal down the pits. Children's working conditions were dangerous. It may lead to injuries or even deaths. Machinery often ran so quickly that their little finger could lose easily. The environment was also harmful because of fumes and toxins in the factories, and there was no government program to provide aid in case of injuries. Children's working hours were too long that they were not allowed to have education. They had to work for 16 hours long. They had to work hard in dangerous environment but with low wages. But their wages were a quarter of a family income. There were still people in this time period that wanted to improve children's working conditions. The first step to improving conditions was in 1833 with the Factory Act passed by Parliament. This limited the amount of hours children of certain ages could work. Children 9 to 13 years of age were only allowed to work 8 hours a day. Those 14 to 18 years old age could not work more than 12 hours a day. Children under 9 were not allowed to work at all. Also, the children were to attend school for no less than 2 hours during the day. Perhaps the most important part of this act was the part that said the government would appoint officials to make sure the act was carried out and complied with. Later, in the early 20th centuries, activists went even further to protect children's rights in labor. Among these figures was Jane Addams. Activists in the U.S. made the government set up the Children's Bureau in 1912. This made it the U.S. government's responsibility to monitor child labor. Child labor today is still a part of many economies. 59 and 600 of the workers in the U.S. are under 14, and many other countries have huge child labor troubles. Child labor came from the Industrial Revolution and is still around today.
Before the Industrial Revolution, people manufactured everything by hand. It was a long process and very slow. There were not enough products to meet demand because the company was not making the items fast enough. Once Sam Slater brought the machinery to the U.S., farmers and weavers were losing their jobs to machines that made things faster than they could. As a result, many people were leaving their farms and coming to the cities to try to find the work they lost. The children and parents all worked together to try and make up for the expenses of moving to a new place and surviving. The children worked in factories, and the mothers did too. The fathers worked as well, but they got more money for just as much work. The machinery was a gateway to all modern technology, and it put America ahead of many countries. The machinery helped in wars since Eli Whitney made the interchangeable parts. In conclusion, the Industrial Revolution was the gateway to modern technology and children's and women's rights.